Hello, this is Wmpyr here to talk about the one and only Bruce Lee. When I think about martial artists who have um, been the most influential on me, Bruce Lee would be in the top five without a doubt. Okay, and not because of the reasons that you might think. All right. Um, I would definitely have to put in that top five list, and I haven't thought it out. So I don't know who would be in that top five, but for sure there needs to be a movie guy, and that would be this guy right here. Why? Because movies have had such a big impact in my life. I am a movie guy. I have watched lots of movies all my life, and as far as martial arts movies, this guy would be number one for me. There's plenty of other martial arts action films that I enjoy. There's plenty of films that I like better than Bruce Lee's movies, actually. But Bruce Lee was more than that. He also had books, and we also have his system of Jeet Kune Do. So I don't see that with other movie guys. You know, like for example, I really like Don the Dragon Wilson movies, but I don't see Don the Dragon Wilson's style, um, unfortunately. Now I know the guy. He's taught, and he can totally teach, but as far as the style being accessible, like Bruce Lee has, like I said, books that are available. You just don't see that with other movie stars. He has written about his philosophy, his fighting method, all that kind of stuff pertaining to martial arts. We have that from Bruce Lee. So um, yeah, as far as martial arts movie star, and I know he probably doesn't like me saying movie star. He doesn't the word star, but movie person. I think he'll like that better. As far as movie person goes, for me, it has to be Bruce Lee. So in that top five list, I would also include, let's say, a book author. So then, who for me, the one that I've read the most, um, and not just that person wrote it, other people wrote about him as well. It would just have to be Miyamoto Musashi, the Book of Five Rings. But Miyamoto Musashi, period. I've done research on the guy. I've watched movies of him. I've watched documentaries about him. I've read books about him. I've read his book, of course, the Book of Five Rings, many times. So, yeah, Miyamoto Musashi, as far as book person. So, movie person, Bruce Lee. Book person, Musashi. Now, there's other very influential martial arts books that has influenced me. For example, The Art of War, Sun Tzu, for sure. But compared to Musashi, I've just read and got more into Musashi's stuff. It just happened to be okay. Not saying that I think Musashi's better than Sun Tzu. It just, for me, it's just been more Musashi's influence. I felt more. Just that's just the way it worked out in my life. So those are two in my top five list that I could name right off the bat. Okay. Um, yeah. A third one I could tell you is I know I'm going off tangent because I'm supposed to be talking about Bruce Lee, but a third one without a doubt would be Captain Fairbairn. All right. So anyway, those are top three. I don't know about the other two, but okay. So let me come back to Bruce Lee. So movie guy, okay, movie guy right here because I am a movie person influenced me in my martial arts journey. This guy right here, okay. Um, let's see. Now, as far as him being a fighter, like the best fighter on the planet, street fighter, best martial artist ever. His skill, his speed, his agility, whatever, all that kind of stuff, his technique, right? It's going to depend on the way you define fighting. And for me, a lot of that stuff with him, the way that I view it is very different from the way other people view it, okay? I just saw a comment section the other day when it was some video talking about Bruce Lee, and then in the comment section it said like Bruce Lee, two things. Number one is they had to slow down. No, Bruce Lee had to slow down his moves because the camera couldn't capture it. So they're trying to say he's hella fast. Therefore, he's the fastest martial artist ever. Okay. And then number two, what else did they say? He had to slow down because the film couldn't capture it. So that's one for sure. I forgot what the other one was, but that's what they said, right, about Bruce Lee. And for me, and the other one was he did not speed up his footage, his martial arts footage, okay, in the movies, right? That he was the one guy that never sped up his footage. Okay, so I hate both of those comments. And people, if you are one of the people putting that down in the comments on YouTube, I hope you'll stop after this. I call bullcrap on both of those. Okay, so and I'm here to debunk that. If that is the way you're going to convince me that this guy's fast, then those to me are the worst ways to do that. They do not tell me that he's fast. Or at least it tells me that you don't know what you're talking about. Because, okay, so as far as him not manipulating film footage, the speed, I know that that's not true. He has. Period. And I think if you watch some of his stuff, you could probably see it. I am not a cinematographer or anything like that, but Bruce Lee didn't do that to make himself look faster, in my opinion. All right? I don't think he needed that or he was insecure about that. He manipulated the footage because he understood a certain speed, film speed, would make martial arts action look better. So for cinematography purposes, he changed the speed. Okay, that's my understanding. So, he did. He did change the speed, but not because of what you're thinking. All right, not because I don't look fast enough. I don't look good. No, he's trying to make it. He basically photoshopped it. I know it was before Photoshop, but he photoshopped it to make it look as good as possible. That's what he did. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, so that's not true. So people need to stop saying that. The second thing, and to me, it doesn't hurt his credibility at all. It doesn't hurt that. It has nothing to, like I said, he did it for cinematography reasons. Number two is he had to slow down his movements. Look, let me tell you this. I met a guy online who said he tried to become a Hollywood stuntman, like that was his goal. And so he met him here in Texas, and we decided, hey, why don't we do a fight scene together? And I was like, you understand some of the cinematography stuff. I understand some of the martial arts stuff. Why don't we try to do a really cool fight scene? And so we did. We worked together, right? And we did it one time. We made one fight scene. And when they were filming us, we had a camera guy. The camera guy told me basically that I was too fast for the camera, okay? And I'm not fat. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this guy, the camera, that was like what? Let's say 10 years ago, Okay, we're using technology of 10 years ago, and that camera 10 years ago couldn't keep up with me. Okay? So can you imagine in Bruce Lee's time? Bruce Lee, I'm not trying to compare my speed with Bruce Lee's speed because there's no comparison. The guy's going to be 100 times faster than me, okay? So the camera is also going to be way older than me because remember, he passed away before I was born. So the technology of the camera that they're using is crappier. And with a camera from 10 years ago couldn't keep up with me, how is a camera from way back when supposed to keep up with Bruce Lee, who's like I said, 100 times faster than me? So I call BS on that. He had to slow down his. I had to slow down my movements, and I'm nobody. So what I'm trying to say is that is a piss poor way to judge a person's speed. That could happen to anyone. It happens to athletes all the time, where they need a certain type of camera to record an athlete and then slow it down and study their movements and stuff like that. So that's total BS. Total BS. Okay. Now, to me, I'm not arguing that I think Bruce Lee is not fast. No, I'm not. I'm not arguing that. But I want to see from a more realistic perspective, from a more viable source. How can we tell that he really was fast, right? And you know, for me, just his size. He's smaller. So when I look at myself, and once again, this is not to compare me to Bruce Lee, but it's more of to say so I can understand, right? I am not a fast guy, all right? Bruce Lee works out like crazy. I work out, not of course not to his level. So compared to someone, that's my size and whatever, I'm gonna have the edge unless they work out. Okay, I'm gonna have the edge in speed just because of that. So Bruce Lee works out like crazy, so that's gonna make him faster. All right, and then if I go up against someone that's bigger than me, naturally I'm gonna be faster. I have a chance to be. I'm not gonna say guaranteed, but I'm gonna be. My motions are smaller. So with Bruce Lee, who's smaller than me. So he already has a natural advantage, is what I'm saying. Plus, he works out like crazy. So can I understand that he's going to be hella fast? That's easy. That's a no-brainer. Now, does that make him the fastest in the world? No. Those two things cannot support that can't be evidence for that. But is he going to be fast? It's easy to understand. Yes, he's going to be fast, right? Now, so that's why people saying fastest in the world and stuff like that, fastest martial artist ever, those claims are ridiculous because you cannot prove that. You cannot. So, but is he hella fast? Does he need to be the fastest ever? No. Him being hella fast is good enough, is what I'm saying. And that would make him formidable because if we get like the guy, the martial artist today who has like the fastest record time of gun disarming, okay, would Bruce Lee be able to beat that guy? I doubt it. Would he be able to beat that guy at his own game? I completely doubt it. Whether it's a fast draw of a knife or a gun or who could shoot the target quicker, or he's not going to win those, all right? And I'm okay with that. I don't have to put him in a magical place and start making claims that are, I can't back up, right? Because if he sparred them full contact, would he be able to land his shot on this guy who, is the world's fastest gun disarming guy? I bet he would. I would put my money on that. I can't back that up. So it's different, is what I'm trying to say, and it does not take away from his speed to say that he wouldn't be able to beat that guy's record at gun disarming. It's just that's okay. That's okay. It's apples and oranges. You know what I mean? People go cross the line, and they'll they'll start making ridiculous claims, and we need to stop that with this guy, So he's hella fast. Now, another thing I can tell you is his personality. Yes, I believe personality has to do with it. They said this guy was just tireless and relentless. The people that knew him, Chuck Norris said he never stopped working out. That Bruce Lee would just keep going and going, and Chuck would be like, bro, you got to rest sometime. Let your body heal. And Bruce Lee didn't understand that. He would just constantly be working out. So basically what I'm trying to say is Bruce Lee was a guy who couldn't sit still. And within a short period of time, I mean, think of the movies that he's made, I mean, he was constantly working on new ideas, trying to get them made into TV, made into film. He's thinking of all these things. He's working, right? He's a workaholic. You could see it in his physique. The guy nonstop works out, right? Okay. So he's the type of person that doesn't sit still. In other words, in his normal life, he's already moving quicker than the average person. I know a person like this, my mom. My mom is like this. So my mom knows that I do martial arts, obviously. So sometimes, jokingly, throughout the years, she would punch me in the stomach, right? To see, just to make sure that my abs are hard. She's testing my abs, right? And she would just, out of nowhere, just punch me in the stomach. She's so crazy because she's constantly cannot sit still. And because of that, it makes her unpredictable. So when you're unpredictable and you're always zipping around, going left, right, whatever, I can't keep up with. So that translates to speed. Now, it may not be literal speed, but that's what I was saying about the gun disarming and stuff. That kind of reflex or literal speed versus combat speed. Okay, so I believe that I would not be able to, or the average person, or even a fit person would have trouble keeping up with this guy, just because A, he's mega fit, B, he's small, and then C, his personality. Okay, so those things are all in his favor to be fast as hell. And then on top of that, he trained specifically for speed. To make himself quicker. He also did stuff like non-telegraphing. He worked on things like that. What is the quickest way that I could go from point A to point B? He studied stuff. So he has that kind of knowledge too. So all of those things combined, was he fast as hell? Hell yeah. It would make sense that anyone would be fast as hell if they did all of that. If they had all of that. Well, this guy had all of that. Now, would that make him fastest in the world, fastest ever? No, there's no claim to support that. And we don't need that. We don't need it. He's fast enough. He's fast enough to be formidable against anybody. Anybody. Okay, those are ground means. Those are solid reasons I gave you that would be formidable against anybody. UFC, lightweight champion, I don't care who it is. I gave you good reasons why he would be fast as hell, okay? And we don't need to say he would be faster than Conor McGregor or that. We don't need that. Why go into that? Because we don't know. Why start now? You're saying stuff that you can't back up, So okay, next thing I got to talk about is now we're going into his fighting. I talked about his speed. Now let me talk about his fighting ability, right? I said it depends on your definition of fighting, all right? How do you measure a good fighter? And a lot of people will go, and today, because we live in an MMA, the combat sport of MMA, the UFC is like one of the most dominant organizations, sport organizations ever. They make tons of money with their pay-per-view. So we live in an MMA world. So people are going to be like, well, how would this guy do in the UFC? They're going to measure it up to that way. And anyone with any kind of common sense would say he's untested. We don't have tons and tons of boxing matches, Muay Thai kickboxing matches, wrestling matches, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments that this guy entered. Obviously, we don't. It's I know it was before. He was before all that, but we don't have that. From him. We don't. So he's untested. Period. But then there's going to be guys that say, well, we're talking about street fighting. We're not talking about sport fighting. Okay. And the way that I see that is here in the U.S., right? I would say the top two street fighters already entered the UFC. So one of them was Tank Abbott. This was a guy that, if you're talking about in the U.S., at one point, would it have been messed up to say he was the best street fighter on the entire North American, United States of America? Was he? I think he's at least a good contender. Top, who knows? I mean, just saying top 10, isn't that good enough? We're talking about the entire USA. I would say Tank Abbott was definitely up there. He was there. Another one that I would say would be Kimbo Slice. Okay. And all these other guys that claim to be the number one street fighter, they never made it into the UFC, so they're untested. But those two guys, we got to see them in the UFC, and we got to see how far they could go. Okay. And I think you guys can see that, in the UFC they were lacking. They had some holes in their game. Both of those gentlemen. They just in some point couldn't compete. So what I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to put those guys down, because those guys are too hella scary. Tank Abbott, Kimbo Slice, like I said, to me, in my eyes, they were the best street fighters in the United States of America at some point. They were number one. Okay, in my eyes, my opinion, right? And when they went into the UFC, they weren't as dominant as they were on the street, in my opinion. Okay, so I think both of those guys on the street were like invincible. But then in the UFC, they weren't. All right. So that tells me, so the people that are talking about, street fighter, Bruce Lee was a street fighter, he would have whooped any UFC guy. No. You guys are getting it wrong. Any street fighter is going to be way below the UFC level. Okay. Period. You're not understanding athlete. And I think Bruce Lee understood that, and that's why he left the comment. He left the comment saying, give me a boxer and a wrestler, and I'll take that over any martial artist. It was a lifelong trained. Or I forgot exactly the quote, but he said something along the lines of like, give me a boxer and wrestler, or someone who's trained in boxing and wrestling for 1 year over someone who's done martial arts for 10 years. Okay, I know that's martial arts, not street fighting, but he understood how good the athletes were. And that's why he was obsessed with studying boxing, Muhammad Ali. And that's why he was, look at how fit he was. Don't tell me that is athlete fit. Okay. And then he had buddies that were martial arts athletes like Chuck Norris, Joe Louis, Bob Wall. All these guys were athletes. They competed in martial arts, sport martial arts. So he understood that, He's, from my understanding, he sparred with those guys, worked out with those guys. So competing is different. He's still untested. I can't. Well, he sparred with those guys, so he would have won. No, I'm not. Why go there? I can't back that up. But he understood. To me, he was smart enough to understand what it took to be that, and that's why he worked out so freaking hard. So he understood that. A guy who was an amazing full contact, well, was it semi-full contact? But at the time, the lines were more blurred. So Chuck Norris was, let's say, semi-full contact, old school. So that makes it more hardcore in my opinion. Old school, semi-full contact karate champion. Okay, so like I said back then, semi-full contact, semi and full, the lines were kind of blurred a lot of times, I think. I don't know, because I wasn't in that circuit, but that's probably the case, I bet. So Chuck Norris, who didn't just compete in that, he was outstanding in that. And that Chuck Norris said about Bruce Lee that this guy just is a workaholic. This is a professional athlete. Chuck Norris was a professional athlete, and he's, praising Bruce Lee on his workout ethic. Can you imagine that? Now, I've seen, like, for example, Josh Barnett talk about CrossFit athletes, and he's amazed by those guys, but he said, you want to be the best in the world at working out? I'd rather be the best in the world at, actually doing something, which kind of sounds a little disrespectful, but I get what he's saying. So Bruce Lee was an amazing guy that worked out and trained incredibly hard. Let's say to a pro level, or enough to impress a professional. Okay. Now, is that enough to be successful in the pro circuit? Maybe we don't know. But it definitely is going to give him a good chance. Okay. So he's still untested, but we're getting as close as possible to, yes, he's untested, and then he worked out with these guys? Damn. We're getting as close as possible without actually doing the actual fighting and competing. But he's right up there, And then I think he knew that, hey, I'm working out with the best in the world, these best athletes in the world. And, I'm able to hold my own, or I'm able to keep up with this or that or whatever. He knows what it takes. And even though he's untested, he goes, I think he understood, like, if we threw down, I have a pretty good chance. And then on top of that, it's street. We're talking about street fighting. So then eye jabs. He's not sport conditioned. So kicks to the groin. He had all of those in his arsenal, and he can do them. He practiced them. He trained them. So then I think that's why he made the claim in this one interview. He said, I'm not going to say I'm the best in the world, but I'm not going to deny it. So I think that's his measurement, and that's why he said that. You know who else had that similar mentality and said something similar? And that was Antonio Inoki. And when Antonio Inoki said that, it's like, do you think that Antonio Inoki could have beaten every single, top fighter or whatever? I think he knew how hard it was, but I think he also understood that on any given day, anything can happen. So that's why he challenged Muhammad Ali. He was confident, for sure, just like this man right here. He was confident that if the stars aligned at a certain point, he could be the best in the world. But I think he also understood just how difficult those waters were, and that would only last a short period of time. Just like in the UFC, sometimes being champion is not sometimes. A lot of it's based on luck. It depends on who's also there competing with you at that time, at that era. And then are you able to peak at the right time? So timing becomes important too. And then on top of that, also what's going on in your life, in the other parts of your life, your non-fighter life. Is it going to hinder you? Is it going to help you? It's just too many factors like that come into play, to be the best in the world. So basically the best in the world is the best fighter in the world or whatever. Those are all illusions. It's an illusion. It is a very temporary thing that you accomplish, So do I think he was the best in the world of his era at that time? I think he understood what it took to be the best in the world, or what was considered to be best in the world at that time. I think he understood it because he trained with those guys and he's seen it and he sparred with those guys. Okay, all of that. So I think he understood. He understood. He was smart enough to understand. And then he tried his best to be able to, if it turned into a street self-defense situation, that he would come out on top. Now, does that mean he would have been successful? Absolutely not. We don't know. He doesn't know. Okay? But he tried his best to make the odds go in his favor. So that's what I got to say about he was a smart guy that understood what he was facing in his era. He had seen it all, or he had seen as much as he could. And he like I said, he was a smart man that did a lot of research, had a massive library, personal library, and he cross-trained with a lot of people. So, yeah. And so that to me, hopefully that puts to rest about how good was he and all that. My answer primarily is he's untested, but that being said, did he have the potential to be, best in his era? I believe so. I believe so. Okay. So then let's talk about what exactly did this guy influence me on? And well, for sure, the training, the working out, being fit. I think we all wanted to just take off our shirts and go up to the mirror and flex, just like this guy, and pretend like we're Bruce Lee. And then now that I'm almost 50, being able to kick someone in the head, that is a hell of a thing to do. It's become harder and harder these years. But that requires a lot of athleticism. When you're young, you don't even think twice about it. Like, oh yeah, I could kick this person in the head. I could kick anyone in the head or whatever. But that is a hell of a thing to do. I can understand why people fight with their fists, and all of a sudden you're changing that. You're completely changing the game there. And of course, with martial arts, everything becomes a weapon, not just your feet, your shins, your forearms, your fingertips. I mean, even your torso, or your thighs, or you use your mind. Everything becomes a weapon. Your breathing pattern. It's just crazy stuff. But it's so first and foremost, just the physical fitness, the sheer athleticism. He brought that onto the screen, and you could just see that, and he was not shy about flexing and showing, how muscular and lean he was, and definitely that was something that I think a lot of us wanted aspire that. And then his system of Jeet Kune Do, studying that, and I went through different phases of studying that, because what I thought it was from his books and his movies, and then and to me that fight scene he has with Bob Wall in Way of the Dragon, that to me beautifully captures. To me, that's the best fight scene he's ever done. That's my favorite. Technically. Yes, the one with Chuck Norris, and yes, all that. And then when you watch The Game of Death, what he really wanted to do with that movie, and he was putting in, he wanted to put in like realistic fighting in there, like where you could hear the fighters' inner thoughts. How are they thinking, all that kind of stuff. Amazing stuff. He would have revolutionized. It's too bad at that time the world didn't get to see it, and the world went the opposite direction. The fight scenes became more unrealistic, and then we got this, Hollywood action stuff that was very, very dynamic. It was action-packed, dynamic, but it wasn't the way he was headed, so that was unfortunate. So what do I think? If he had lived, if he had lived, I think he would have changed choreography, fight choreography as we know it. It would have been more realistic looking. We people like rave about John Wick, which I haven't really seen. I saw like one, maybe two. I don't. I'm sorry, I don't really pay attention to modern movies and that kind of stuff. But I know people were raving that the John Wick stuff was more realistic or whatever, or the Raid. People were raving about that. So I think we would have seen that kind of stuff, more realistic fight scenes back in the 70s, late 60s and the 70s. We would have already seen it. Because of this man right here is way ahead of his time. Way ahead of his time. You know, and instead of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon winning, all the awards at the time, he would have been winning awards, and it would have been for not rope work, but visually beautiful, realistic fight scenes. I think that would have been the case. Just my personal opinion, So anyway, let's move on. So his system of Jeet Kune Do influences me big time because of Professor Danny Inosanto, who is the link for me, because I like cross training, and I did a bunch of different martial arts styles, but my main style, of course, is Kia, Kali, Escrima, Arnis from the Filipino martial arts. Professor Danny Inosanto mixed in the Filipino martial arts with the Jeet Kune Do, so that was the part of the curriculum that he was teaching at, what is it, Princeton? I don't remember, but he was teaching that course, and so Jeet Kune Do changed, and I think that's what Bruce Lee wanted. He wanted you to do what my teacher's teacher would say, which is make it your own. So he wanted you to make Jeet Kune Do yours. And Professor Danny Inosanto, to me, did exactly that. He didn't, try to be the Bruce Lee clone. He did his own blend, right? And Professor Danny Inosanto was a guy that he definitely seems to really, really like martial arts, period. He loves the variety, the diversity. So he really, really studied, very knowledgeable. He's like probably a walking encyclopedia. I never met the guy, but I feel like that's him. That's the way. I don't think Bruce Lee was that. He knew a lot of stuff, and he'd probably look at it and pick what he liked, and the rest he'd just kind of like toss out and be like, okay, whatever. Whereas I think it's just a different way of studying, right? A different way to study. And Professor Danny Inosanto in that way was probably, scholar-wise, a better scholar. Bruce Lee was probably better at, I'm just going to, a better applier, So it's just two different things right there. But, yeah. So to me, Professor Danny Inosanto did what this man wanted you to do. He understood that. Make it your own. And for me, with my teacher's teacher said, make it your own, and then I'm cross-training here, and Filipino martial arts is heavily connected to Jeet Kune Do here in the United States especially, so it seemed right. And plus, I'm watching and studying a lot of Bruce Lee stuff. It just worked together. It was almost inseparable. So me being really, really into Arnis at the time, it just, or to this day, it just worked. And then of course the UFC came out and everything. So, and Bruce Lee was one of the first to do the tournament thing. I know in Enter the Dragon, the tournament is definitely eclipsed by Bruce Lee himself. It is totally eclipsed. I think a lot of people forget, oh, that's a tournament movie? Yes, Bloodsport did it better, without a doubt. Was a better tournament movie. But before Bloodsport, it was Enter the Dragon. So, and then like I said, for me at that era when I just started martial arts in 1990, and then by 93, that's when the UFC came out. It just Jeet Kune Do just fell in it for me. How could I not? And so doing all of that together, um, when I started fighting, like and not professional or not even amateur, these were challenge matches, right? This is more like backyard. They weren't backyard. They were on the college campus on a wrestling mat, style versus style. That wrestling mat was crusty, old. It was hard. It was really, really hard. Um, so it's not like I as a stand-up striker, I felt like it was limiting me. No, you could grapple on it, but you could also, I had no problem fighting on that, stand up wise, doing stand-up striking. But anyway, so I had challenge matches on there against other 95% of the time was against other martial artists. There were times where, like, I remember one guy was, I was like, "What's your background?" And he was like, "Well, I'm into bikes. I'm a biker." Or another guy was a football player. He was not a martial artist. He was just a big, like 300 pound, or close to 300 pound. Maybe it was over 300 pound. But he was just a big football player. But all the rest have been martial arts guys that I had challenge matches with, and of course I could not just go in there with using the Filipino martial arts because for me it was more about sticks at the time, and I didn't do the full contact stick fighting. So we're talking about empty hand. So I would 90% of the time in these challenge matches, I would use Muay Thai kickboxing. And what I really liked was like Don the Dragon Wilson, who was an amazing, decorated kickboxing champion, but he says, "I am a martial artist first." So he was a martial arts guy with amazing kickboxing. So I kind of modeled myself after that. I wanted to be that, I wanted to be a kickboxer that had so Bruce Lee's kind of, to me, falls in the same category. He's this amazing combat sport fit. He was not an athlete competitor because he wasn't, but he was fit enough to do that if he wanted to. I'm not saying he would have won, because we just simply don't know. But I think he, like I said, he stacked the odds. He trained really hard, trained with the right people, so that if he ever did decide to compete, it would go in his favor. So he was very smart about that, while preserving his brain, his looks, he's not getting injured, or as bad as if he had competed. So anyway, to me, he had that, but he's a martial arts guy, obviously. So I wanted that, I same idea, to be combat sport fit, but have the martial arts technique, because we're talking about no rules here, right? So that's the way that I was thinking. And so in these challenge matches, 90% of the time, I would start off with kickboxing. And more specific, Muay Thai kickboxing was my specialty. So for empty hands. So that's what I would start off with. But if I ever felt like I was truly in danger, I would switch it to Jeet Kune Do, because now the eye jabs, the spear hand to the throat, roundhouse kick to the nuts, using the pointed toes, Savat style. Those kinds of things would come out. And if I did get taken to the ground, well, he said it. He said, bite the guy. So I would bite the guy, and I did. In one instance, I did bite a guy on his shoulder. It's not as easy as you think. You have to be pretty freaking ruthless. And I think in Enter the Dragon, I remember a scene where Han was saying that most people can't just all of a sudden be totally ruthless. So, but in that situation, I did. I was fighting for my life. I bit the guy. Um, but let's move on. So Jeet Kune Do was definitely a big part, big influence. The system of Jeet Kune Do. I'm not going to say style because he hated that, right? He didn't want that. So the system, he created a system. It wasn't a style, it was a system. He was one of the first people to, I believe, address that without really calling it a system. So what he did was, that's a system, right? He should have said, I'm going to make a system. It's not a style. And let me differentiate what's the difference between a style and a system. And the system could be applied to styles. Because he, at the end of the day, I believe, was about humans. This is about, for any human, not about, oh, I'm a karate man, I'm a judo guy. Judo guys do only this. We don't do that. Boxers only do that. We don't do that. You know, he was like, no, we're all human. We can do whatever we want. You could come in as a boxer, you know, but you could kick me in the balls. You could do anything. You could pull my hair, whatever, you know. So that is what Bruce Lee was interested in. And so he didn't want you to confine yourself to your style, you know, is my understanding. So Jeet Kune Do goes beyond style. It's a system that could be applied to any style. And that's the way that I see it, and that's the way that I would define it, and I believe that's what he was thinking. So that's a system for you. So next, yeah, talk about mega fit. And I know Enter the Dragon, amazing movie, and it was a huge accomplishment for him. To me, it was more of a political move. He had to do it in order to break into Hollywood, because he understood that American movies were #1 in the world at the time. So here, however, you watch this and you can see this is from Way of the Dragon. And I mean, yes, he looked hella fit in Enter the Dragon, but to me this was, I'm thinking this was his prime right here, was Way of the Dragon. This is Bruce Lee's best. He directed it. He directed this movie, you know. To me, this was Bruce Lee's best right here. And then Game of Death would have been amazing. Would have been. It's too bad. Too bad we didn't get to fully see. And then, if you guys haven't seen it, there's a movie called The Circle of Iron. And yes, it's ironically or unfortunately, or however you want to put it, played David Carradine's in it. You know, the guy that took his spot in Kung Fu is also in this movie that was co-written, or I don't know how much, or if it was totally written by Bruce Lee, but Circle of Iron is a very, very interesting movie. And even though, if you watch it now, you could barely see any kind of like, oh, this has Bruce Lee's fingerprints. It's kind of hard to see it, you know, but there is philosophy stuff in there. The martial arts is in there. Watch Circle of Iron, and then after you watch it, imagine what if Bruce Lee was in there, you know. What if Bruce Lee fully got his paws on this film? How awesome would it have been? You know, but that's hella cool. That's I've watched that movie since I was a kid many times. We owned it on Betamax for some reason, so I got to see it growing up. Dad hated that movie. But he just bought everything he could get his hands on to have a massive Betamax collection, which we did. So we had movies that were not his forte at all, like Planet of the Apes. He didn't even like that movie either. But yeah, those were two movies that I watched, and Planet of the Apes traumatized me. But okay, so here, yeah, just freaking amazing. Yeah, definitely top 5 biggest martial arts influences in my life. And yeah, this is the last photo that I have for you guys. So yeah, if you've watched this whole video, we're almost reaching an hour. If you want to, in the comments below, tell me your top 5 influences, that'll be cool. That I would be interested to know. So anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.